conditioning running in order to do this show today. Anyway, well, welcome back to Inde-Car on, get to the date. Well, it's Tuesday, and it's Tuesday the 29th of July. So, welcome back to Inde-Car. Now, looking for things to talk about in the news at the moment actually isn't all that hard. Just for a change, there's actually some stories I can talk about. And I think the one which appears to garner the most attention at the moment is the US President's visit to Scotland. Now, I use the word visit in its loosest sense here because Mr. Trump's visit to Scotland is meant to be a golfing holiday. This is supposed to be him relaxing, chilling out, playing a few rounds of golf at the golf courses that he owns, right? And seeing how many millions of pounds losses they're making, because none of his golf courses here make any money. But anyway, so he's meant to be here on holiday. But literally as soon as his big feet touched down and walked onto the fairway at Turnberry, there was a rustling sound as both the Prime Minister of England and the First Minister of Scotland basically made a beeline to Turnberry to greet the President of the United States. Now remember, this isn't a state visit. There were no arrangements made for Trump's security, nothing like that was even talked about, and still he's visiting. Why did the Prime Minister and the First Minister feel the need to go rushing over to the golf club to talk to Mr. Trump? I think there's two reasons for that. The first reason, especially with Mr. Starmer, is really to make himself seem relevant and to be seen to be with Donald Trump, be one of his buddies. And despite the fact that during one of the interviews with the press, Donald Trump was asked for his views about the United Kingdom, and he went off on one of his little rants, and he started to complain bitterly about the state of Great Britain, and particularly about Sadiq Khan and various other members of Parliament, going on about how badly run the country was. At which point, for some bizarre and cringy reason, Starmer decided to cut in and said, well, he's actually a friend of mine. To which Donald Trump didn't even break stride. I just wanted to say, well, I think he's doing a terrible job. Which left Starmer literally sitting there speechless, gobsmacked by the fact that he'd been dismissed so out of hand by Mr. Trump, but unable to do anything about it because he has decided to try to balance himself on the coattails of the United States President. And somebody asked me, or asked generally on X recently, why was it being reported in the BBC that Keir Starmer was left-leaning? And I said, well, maybe it's because he's about to fall off Donald Trump's coattails and he's having to lean left to try and balance himself up. But obviously the BBC seems to believe that Keir Starmer is a politician of the left, which we all know is a load of nonsense, because if he were, or if the Labour Party was a party of the left, it would be somebody like Jeremy Corbyn who would be in charge of it, and yet he isn't. And not only that, but Jeremy Corbyn has now decided to start his own party, which essentially is more socialist, but still very much British nationalist. Corbyn's spokesperson, for want of a better word, has intimated that this new party is supposedly in favour of Scottish self-determination, but it wouldn't be drawn on the issue of whether we should become independent or not, which I guess you would expect from an English politician, especially one like Jeremy Corbyn. Now, Jeremy Corbyn is a close personal friend of many people. I know that Craig Murray regards Corbyn as a friend, and you have to remember that Craig Murray is a socialist, and so it would be natural for him to be friends with somebody like Jeremy Corbyn. Now, a lot of people have speculated about whether Mr. Corbyn's new party is going to damage any other parties in Scotland. And it's been suggested, I think, by Wings Over Scotland, who often make good predictions sometimes, despite what's said about him. Stuart Campbell has said that he thinks that Corbyn's new party might be the death of the Greens in Scotland. So I said, like a sort of political weed killer, really. If that's true, is it true? Nobody seems to really know. But a party of the socialist left is exactly what the Greens have been presenting themselves as. And to a large extent, that's been true. Their politics are largely progressive left sort of leaning, right? And they're very socially inclusive and all the rest of it. But Corbyn's new party really kind of blows that away because it's so directly political. It's not ecological. It's not green in the sense that the Greens are. But it remains to be seen whether he will break into the Green vote or destroy it in Scotland. Nobody's really quite sure, but it will not move the dial, I don't think, in Scottish politics when it comes to next year's general election. There will still be smaller parties existing on the list and campaigning to win regional list seats, which is fine. That's the way it's supposed to be. Now, to come back to Trump for a moment, and the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, obviously arrived one embarrassing. John Swinney, he also scurried along there to meet and greet the great orange one and shook his hand, and I don't know what they talked about. But one of the interesting things that came out of Trump's holiday to Turnberry is the fact that his imported bulletproof, bomb-proof limousine kind of entourage was seen passing through Turnberry, and on Trump's car were, on one corner, the Stars and Stripes of the United States, and on the other front bumper of this car was the Saltire of Scotland. Now, that might not seem all that important, but when it comes from the President of the United States and he chooses, instead of the Union Jack going on the bonnet of his car, the Saltire, well, that's a real snub to people like Starmer, maybe even Jeremy Corbyn, and certainly all of the English parties which have branches here in Scotland. To have Scotland